Let's talk about magic in the world of ReZero. There's enough information here that I wanted to make a separate video for it by itself. This is going to cover a little more than the basics, but it's not going to cover everything. Don't expect me to fucking pull out a list here and start reading off magic spells or anything. All right, the world of ReZero is covered in mana. It's pretty much everywhere, even though you can't really see it. It is possible for an area to run out for various reasons, but it does eventually get replaced, so it's not that big a deal. Well, for the short term, it's not a big deal. For the long term, it is. Humans, demi-humans, people are able to interact with mana to do different things. Casting magic is generally what people think of, but there are other things that you can do, such as boost your physical ability or create magic items. For this video, I'm going to be focusing on the magic casting side, but I did want to point out that there are other uses for mana. Two important concepts. Everyone has a gate and an ode. The gate is exactly what it sounds like. It controls mana coming into the body and going out of the body. The gate slowly absorbs mana from the environment and puts it into the person. And when they want to cast magic, then the gate turns that mana into the spell being cast. How well the gate works will depend on the person. For most people, their gate's not going to work well enough for them to be a magic user. And there's really not much that can be done to change that. Uh, Training and practice helps, so it's not like magic's impossible, but for most people, they're just not going to be good enough with magic that it's worth the time and effort, especially with the risks that are involved that I'll talk about here in a minute. The ode is a person's soul. For the purpose of magic, it also functions like a container. Mana comes in through the gate and is stored in the ode. How big that container is will depend on the person. Once again, there's not really anything to change that. So much of magic is based on just being born lucky. It is technically possible to use your ode to cast magic instead of using mana, but chipping away at your soul is generally a bad idea. So it's really only used in case of emergency. To relate this back to video games, the ode would decide your max MP and how fast your mana recharges and how strong your spells are will depend on your gate. It is possible to break the gate. If the gate's shit, but the person still really wants to be a magic user, so they keep casting magic, then there's a good chance that their gate is going to be overworked and will eventually break. And when that happens, there are two possibilities. Again, the gate handles mana coming in and going out. So if it breaks, then all of a sudden mana either can't come in or can't go out. And there are very different consequences for each of those. If mana can't come in, then you can't use magic or anything to do with mana, actually. You have whatever mana is in your ode at the time that it breaks, but then once you use it all up, then no more mana. That's it. Technically, it is possible to get more mana, but for most people, that's just not going to happen. So if it breaks in the way that you can't take in any more mana, you're just stuck not ever being a magic user, period. If mana can't leave, then you die. What happens is mana keeps coming in, but it can't go out. This is called mana poisoning. The ode gets overfilled, and eventually breaks. And if your soul breaks, then you die. That's just it. Technically, it is possible to stop your ode from being overfilled, but there's not a whole lot of ways to do so, and it's something that would require constant help, basically. And for most people, they're just gonna die. Thinking about it now, there's a lot of people in the story that have a broken gate. I'll wait to bring it up for each person, but this is really not as rare as I originally thought. At least not for the cast of the story, anyway. Okay, quick review of magic users. Mana is in the atmosphere, the gate absorbs it and puts it into the ode. Then, when the user wants to cast magic, mana is taken out of the ode, passed through the gate, and turned into the magic spell. The other way to use magic is to use a spirit. Spirits are basically life forms that exist because of mana, to very much oversimplify it. And they come in a few levels: lesser spirit, quasi spirit, spirit, and great spirit. In most cases, a spirit will start at the bottom and may or may not work its way up the ladder. At each step, the spirit is more sentient and more powerful. There are a few man made spirits, but as far as I know, these are really rare. Only one person has ever been said to have been able to create them, and there's only a few of them in the world. Some people can form contracts with spirits and use magic through them. The contract can be pretty much anything that both parties agree to. The stronger the spirit, the more strict, I guess, the contract will probably be. Lesser spirits are probably just going to ask, like, to get access to the user's mana just so that they can grow stronger. But a stronger spirit can ask for like a whole list of things, and that includes things that need to be done every single day in order to keep the contract. It really just depends on the spirit. Once the contract has been made, the spirit basically takes part of the function of the gate. The spirit takes mana straight from the environment into itself, then converts it into the spell being cast. This does mean the spell's strength is determined by the spirit instead of the user's gate, and it can be better or worse than the user's gate. I think it is possible to be both a magic user and a spirit user. Just have your spirit casting magic from the environment, and then you firing off magic from your gate. But as far as I know, I don't remember seeing an example of this anywhere. Every time we've seen a spirit user, they've always cast magic using the spirit. So maybe I'm misremembering. I don't know. I tried looking it up and I couldn't really find anything. So who knows? Uh, Amelia is a weird exception to all of this, but her situation is very complicated and needs a video by itself. That's the basics for casting magic. Let's get into the basics of magic spells. Magic spells come in 6 elements: 4 basic and 2 rare: fire, water, wind, earth, light, and dark. Dark and light are actually called yin and yang in the light novels. From this, you can get an idea of what each element does. Fire lets you do stuff with fire, water lets you do stuff with water, etc., etc. Except it's actually a bit more complicated than it sounds. The fire element covers temperature, water covers healing, dark is debuffs, and light is probably buffs. This explains why Puck is considered a fire spirit, even though he mostly uses ice. He just brings down the temperature to make ice. There's more than one way to skin a cat, as Puck would say. Okay, no, he wouldn't say that. The water element can also be used to create ice just by manipulating the water. This example kind of shows that there are differences based on which element is used. Ice that's made from the water element doesn't last very long, but ice made from the fire element can last a very long time. So going through a different element can actually get you slightly different results. So the 6 elements can give you an idea, but subtext can give you a better explanation for how it works. The novels explain that earth functions inside the body and wind functions outside the body, but I honestly have no idea what the fuck that means. I've tried looking over the list of spells, but it really didn't help. I've seen a theory that it's referring to blessings, but I am not super convinced by that. Wind just seems to control wind, and earth just seems to control earth, but I'm sure it's more complicated than that. I have no idea. We haven't seen a whole lot from the light element, so buffs may not be completely correct, but from what little we've seen, it kind of matches up. Dark handles debuff, so it would make sense that light handles buffs. In the fourth or fifth arc, it's actually explained that dark handles space time, which is pretty fucking cool. Beatrice, being a master of dark, uses this for her door crossing ability that hides the forbidden library. Generally, a magic user will have one innate attribute that decides which magic element they can use. For a few, they will have multiple innate attributes, so they can use multiple different types of magic. With enough practice, they can even mix the different elements to create new spells. Roswell can actually fly because he mixes fire, wind, and earth. Don't ask me how that works. It just does. All right, now that all that's been covered, let's go ahead and take a step back. Earlier, I said that each person has an ode that is their soul. And apparently, this is true for the world itself, too. It's called the Ode Laguna. At least that's how I'm going to pronounce it. Its exact location isn't really known, and it's not sentient, but it does a lot of functions for the world. It manages the mana that's in the atmosphere, and apparently, if there's not enough mana in a certain spot, in different spots around the world, then it can cause natural disasters. So if the old Laguna sees that there's not enough mana in certain spots, it can like basically move the mana around to even things out. So this is kind of an important thing that needs done for all living things. It also regulates odes, which pretty much confirms reincarnation in this world. The person dies, the ode comes in, and all the memories are stripped out, and the purified ode gets reborn back into the world. Now, the memories that are stripped out are put into books that are placed in an infinite library that is called the Corridor of Memories. Now, this is explored more in the sixth arc, so I will wait and talk about that more then. Since the old Laguna deals with the souls, it's also believed that it handles the blessings or divine protections. Most blessings are given at birth, and they're just basically passive buffs, and they do different things. Not everyone gets one. In fact, most people don't. And even if you do, there's a good chance that it is just going to be shit. I'm going to go ahead and read off the ratios from the wiki. I think these are ratios for the few people that actually get a blessing. 1 in 100 are useless. 1 in 1,000 are useful. 1 in 10,000 are somewhat rare. 1 in 100,000 are really useful. 1 in a million are unique. 1 in 10 million get more than one. So most of them are either useless or slightly useful, and most of them are not unique. I have no idea how the fuck they got these numbers. But I would be interested to know if they included the Earth and the Water Dragons in on these numbers, since all of them have a blessing and they're all somewhat useful. So I feel like if they did include them, then that would skew these numbers for everyone else. With these stats, it's actually surprising that we see so many good divine protections in the story. But I guess we are looking at the upper class most of the time, and I guess it's not really that surprising that having a good divine protection kind of elevates you into a higher status. The author has come out and said that the old Laguna doesn't have a will of its own, but I have seen some arguments to the contrary. For most people with the blessing, you could kind of come to the conclusion that the old Laguna just kind of handed out blessings, and they were just born with it, and then they did whatever they did with it. But there is one person that kind of goes against this and throws everything off, and that is Reinhardt. I'm not going to go into too many details on him, but I do want to talk about his divine protections. One reason that he is so fucking strong is because he can request any blessing, any divine protection that he needs. Literally anything. Even if it's an ability that's never been heard of before, Reinhardt can just request it from the old Laguna. Apparently, there can be misunderstandings, and Reinhardt doesn't get the ability that he actually wants. But he has the ability to remove divine protections. So if he doesn't get what he wants, if he gets a bad one, he can just remove it and try again. Anyway, the back to the reason that I brought this up in the first place. I've seen theories that the old Laguna is actually somewhat sentient, and its interactions with Reinhardt are a big reason that people think this. If it doesn't play favorites with others, it sure as hell looks like it plays favorites with him. I still side with the author that it doesn't have a will of its own because, he's writing the fucking story. But I can completely understand why people disagree with that. And I think the big issue is that we just don't have enough information on the old Laguna. So right now, we're just kind of guessing on a lot of it. All right, that's the basics for magic and blessings. Hopefully, I didn't miss anything too important. All right, that's it. See ya. What the fuck is happening here? My superpower is activating. Yeah, this is literally the auto contrast or whatever it is. You can see how wide I am. My arms over here blending in with the background. I wonder if it's because I have a black shirt on, because normally it doesn't do that. All right, well, this isn't working.